Welcome to Season 2 of RecLess, the podcast making you smarter and more knowledgeable about the field of parks and recreation. Join hosts Shane Mize, Jay Tryon, and Tom Venniro, three career-long friends from around the country as they dive into the world of parks and recreation with a surprise guest each episode. Laughs, leadership, life. This is RecLess.
All right, folks, welcome to another episode of RecLess. My name's Shane, and we're on episode 30. I've got my good buddies here, Tom and Jay, and we're hoping everyone's feeling a little reckless today. We've got a guest we're looking forward to introducing, but before we get started, we've got our typical banter, and I've got a question locked and loaded for today. I can't wait to hear the responses. So the question is, first of all, welcome, fellas. How are y'all?
I know. Thanks for letting us say hello.
Yeah.
Jeez. You want to say there's banter, but we can't even speak.
I'm getting down to business, fellas.
Yeah, I was told it was the Jay show earlier. Now
Oh,
it seems
geez.
like it's the Shane show.
Well, this is the Tom season.
That's right. That's right. Everyone's getting their licks in for sure. Okay, so here's the question. What town, area, maybe even country or part of a country are you in some ways always intrigued by, maybe even enthralled by, something that you're like, wow, anytime that name comes up of that location, it piques your interest. You maybe see an article, maybe it's about food, culture, whatever, but you know you'll never live there. Like, it's not that you're intrigued about it because you want to live there. You're just intrigued about it for other reasons. And if y'all need a second, which I get, I can go first. Okay, I'll go while y'all think.
Well, hold on. I'm going to go. This is not my answer,
Okay.
but I'm always intrigued by Pflugerville because they do not spell things correctly.
Yeah,
Every t-shirt you make has something spelled incorrectly.
I honestly want to do a F word festival. I want it to be announced on the radio, and anybody that's hearing it's the F word festival, and of course it's PF, but I haven't been able to get my city leadership to wrap their head around that one yet. Yeah, the F word festival is my ultimate goal before I leave here. Just all things celebrating PFA, whatever that would be.
Okay.
But I'll go first just to give y'all time. So, and this is absolutely like an oxymoron situation for me because it's South Beach, Miami. South Beach, Miami is touristy. South Beach,
You hate
Miami
people.
is hot. It is muggy. It is sunny. I hate the beach. I hate the ocean. But
And a lot of people.
Yeah, a lot of people. Very touristy. I mean, I can't imagine there's lines everywhere, but everything about anytime I hear the word South Beach, I mention it. I think I love the Cuban and Hispanic culture that's there. I enjoy, we talked about this with Maria a little bit, just how inviting it is as a culture, how they just automatically accept you in. We had some people in the Houston area that were from the Miami area, and I loved always talking to them and hearing their stories of growing up. I think I love that it's so close to Cuba, and I love a lot of folks have come across and migrated over and have made a life for themselves there, and maybe what they were trying to escape in Cuba. I think I'm very interested in all the food that they have there, but I just think it sounds like a really and honestly cigars. I'm a huge cigar smoker, as y'all know, and that's probably the best spot other than Cuba to be selecting cigars. And so I just think there's something about it that it always piques my interest. I'm always intrigued by it. Even when we were kids, and I know I'm a little older than y'all, but Miami Vice, they always had cool shows. There were always cool things going on, in Miami, and it's an iconic thing. And I think in some ways it's as unapologetically Miami as Texas is unapologetically Texas. Like, we have the Webster's Dictionary, and every year they come out and they talk about they add new words to the dictionary. I remember the year they literally added and how they actually defined it incorrectly, but that's how everyone was using it. Same thing happens in Norway. I don't know if it's Webster's, but it's somebody. And they added Texas this year into their definitions in Norway. And they literally use Texas like we would use here, like batshit crazy. Like the craziest thing you can describe, they use the word Texas for that definition of that metric of describing it. And so I don't know if I feel like Miami's a lot of that same way. You see some crazy things come out of that part of the world, but I'm just terribly intrigued by it. And I will never live there. I might not even ever visit, but anytime I hear about Miami or South Beach, it does pique my interest. and I wanted to see what y'all have for y'all's.
Ooh, well, I wouldn't be me if I didn't give you two answers.
That's true. Dead on.
I think a lot of it's driven by what I enjoy in terms of aesthetics and then consumables and food, right? So
Mhm.
for me, the one place that's always treated me well is Texas. So let's just play off of that. I don't know that I don't know if or when I would ever make a decision to move, right? In general, we've talked about that on our previous shows. But Texas has a lot of everything, right? It's got all types of food, and especially if you like, if you like barbecue or some,
It's a great food state. For
yeah,
sure.
it is.
Yeah.
It is. I've had great experiences from that perspective. And then of course, I personally, it's March 22nd and it is snowing. We got a winter weather advisory. It was 70 degrees 2 days in the last 2 weeks, and now we're back to a winter weather advisory. So, even though I know it's as hot as can be in Texas, it always has intrigued me to be in a state where you don't have to really worry too much about the cold. Although I know you've had some close calls over the last few years where it seemed uncharacteristically cold.
Yeah.
And
But
yeah,
that's small. Like there's a reason a lot of people live in Texas. It's a
yeah.
gorgeous place to live weather-wise for 9-10 months out of the year, except for the really hot months. I mean, it's 68 right now. It'll be a high 74 today. It's great. Great day.
Yeah, it's so I've experienced Austin, Dallas, Houston, and I would love to experience a little bit more, right? It's some of the smaller cities or towns because I'm sure there's some really hidden gems when it comes to food. You've told us a lot about it, Shane. And then from an aesthetic piece, and then also the food. I live in New York, Western New York, but I have not really done a whole lot of traveling in the Northeast. So your Maine, your Cape Cod, Salem, those areas that have that old, rich, whatever you want to call it, colonial looks to them, right? You see them on TV, you see them on the movies. Those areas do it for me. That old kind of, I don't know, villagey type of feel where it's just beautiful. There's a lot of history. And then, of course, the food, right? Lobster rolls, whatever it may be. It's a whole different atmosphere. And Jay, you're a little more familiar with it, but I like, I like a good beer here and there. And they have a great brewery scene up in that area as well. So
Maine's interesting. There's not a lot of places Hannah and I talk about East. I'm usually interested in most of the Western United States and some of the less populated areas, but my oldest and our oldest is different than y'all's two oldest as far as age.
Your oldest is our age.
It's an adult, yeah, but she's 23 and she's in a very serious relationship with a guy that just got offered a job in Maine, and so they're seriously considering
What
what
part of
that
Maine,
would look like. Central. I don't I don't know the whole state. Like you could probably touch one side, the other, just reach out, right? I don't know. So it's not.
Well, see, I don't know that we've talked about this, and you may not know this. I got married in Maine. Like, Lindsay's from
that.
Maine.
yeah, I knew that.
Yeah, so she's from Maine. We got married up there. You can make jokes about the size of the state. The entire state has the same area code. Like,
That's
no
funny.
matter where you live in the state of Maine, your area code is 207. So it's very different. Where like, shoot, I grew up an hour from Tom. We have two different area codes, but the
Right.
entire state is one area code.
That's
So that's why when I ask where in Maine, I'm just curious because I'm very familiar with Maine.
He works at Bell Helicopter, so it'd be wherever their Bell Helicopter plant is. I think I was told Central Maine, but she's a professional photographer, so she's very intrigued by it because everyone says it's beautiful there.
Yeah,
So.
beautiful fall. You still get the fall on the coast. Yeah.
Awesome. As we have done in several other podcasts, I'm gonna go in a totally different direction with this because the first thing that came to mind is a conversation I've had several times with Lindsay, and we will never do it, but we always talk about just drop and ship and move into the Caribbean and literally like going down to a remote island like St. Martin or, we've talked about places in Jamaica and area, just that like you'd open like a bed and breakfast, totally stop the corporate life and government job and what we've done forever. And just,
would you still podcast?
From a beach, I'd be on a beach podcasting.
Okay.
So, and I always, my favorite form of vacationing is cruises. And we've talked about that before. You are like deathly scared of them or hate them to death, even though you've never done it.
Crazy.
But, I've gone on 5 or 6 different cruises, maybe more. And for me, the idea of being able to go to a remote island or a new island I've never been before, that I'm never going to just fly to regularly, and I get to go spend a day there or 2 days, depending on what type of cruise it is very attractive to me because it's going to let me see a place I've never seen before. So we've been to some really cool places, and as we're there, it's local fish, local food. Sometimes we've been in parts of Mexico that like didn't have electricity, and in order for them to make an adult beverage or a cocktail, like they're bringing ice from across the island. It's just
Wow.
totally cool, very unique, and like some of that is very just interesting to me, to like how you would totally move your whole family or maybe just you or whoever and start a new life on a different part of the world, ultimately, that doesn't have the hustle and bustle of 40-hour work weeks. And we've met some people on cruises that like live in these islands that like moved from the States. And they're like, yeah, like I had a corporate 9 to 5 job, or maybe 60-hour-a-week job, and now I am a Uber driver in Cabo San Lucas. Or it's just, you never know. So it's kind of neat, and don't think we'll ever do it, but
Yeah.
I love the idea.
That expat lifestyle, Hannah and I have talked about before, like how cool would it be to take a year or 2 years or whatever, just, I don't know if we talk about the Caribbean, but we've talked about really small spots of Europe that aren't super popular, like Hungary or something. Could we
Yeah.
live there a year? Could we live in France, not Paris, but just like in the hillside somewhere for,
Yeah.
or something like that. That's cool.
Like my favorite, now we're going to get off topic a little bit. My favorite island of all time is Grand Cayman. And Grand Cayman's known for a lot of things. But the coolest thing about Grand Cayman is we rented bikes one time, and you can literally like bike from one side of the island to the other, or bike the entire island in a couple hours. And there's
How long
different
would it
bike
take
paths.
me?
It would take you a couple days.
Okay. Gotcha.
Would be my guess. But it's so unique. And then, you stop and get like a total local fresh fruit smoothie of like fruit they're picking off the tree, that you literally see them grab it from the tree, throw it in the blender, and you can't get any more fresh than that. And then, you're going to have dinner off the fish they caught that day off the boat, and, just different lifestyle. No, not much stress. When you're in these islands, like everyone's just stress-free, enjoying the outdoors, and the weather's perfect, and it's beautiful.
Yeah, I think Kenny Chesney wrote a few songs about it, and your guy Tom Brady, I'm pretty sure he bought an island, so you might want to just see if you can look him up, see how you can make that happen.
Grand Champion Cayman is what he named his island. Well, I appreciate that. I enjoy, we find out more about each other. This, hopefully the guests don't mind, and the 12 listeners we have enjoy getting to know a little bit more. So speaking of guests, got my guest here. My guest, as y'all know, may be a male, not giving it away.
First time, long time.
First time, long time. They have had a career through Parks and Rec and city management. It's another one of those that have been in the city management office as well. First guest I'll give away, Jay and I have approved sessions for them through the program committee. They were very popular. They dealt with bond presentations and bond implementation, and they partnered with Trust for Public Land, and they did a part 1 and part 2. He's already thinking that's good. They have 4 kids, and they have a spouse that works in government, serves in a school board capacity. Any guesses so far?
I don't, and I have ideas normally.
I have a potential idea based on the family dynamic you just mentioned.
Okay. They got their degree in teaching, but they were a Park and Rec kid. And like we talked about before, didn't realize Parks and Rec was an actual career. They grew up enjoying Parks and Rec. In fact, saw the folks in their local agency and their very iconic branding that agency wore, and they wanted to be like that, but they didn't know that was a career. And once they realized it was a career, they switched and pursued public administration. They've worked in the cities of Hialeah, Doral, City of Miami Beach, City of Miami, back to Doral, and will soon be going back to the City of Miami. I think y'all would know who this person was if you didn't believe it was a male.
Yeah, no, I know who it is.
It's not a male. It's a female.
No, it is. It is. Very famous movie just came out.
Yeah. That was going to be my last one.
And I know who it is.
Out of him last summer. So introducing the new assistant city manager for the city of Miami, Florida, our friend, Barbie Hernandez.
Hey, hey,
Welcome.
Hi guys.
What's up?
Hey,
what's going on?
Hi guys.
How's it going?
the intro question and Shane's answer now makes so much sense.
Yeah.
Barbie's one of those girls that always makes me intrigued by South Beach. She's always a warm welcome, always great to see at conference. And I'm super excited to have her on today. And we've got right out the chute, I wanted to talk about your transition. And because you went through something recently that not a lot of Parks and Rec professionals ever go through. And not only just transitioning from a Parks and Rec director role to city manager role, which I have stated on this podcast is the worst job in America. But you were publicly fired in a meeting, and you had been there for a short time. You'd been the Doral Parks and Rec director, had a lot of success, came back. There was a change on council, and they voted you out 3-2. And you had to sit in that meeting. You had to hear public comment. Now, there's an article, and I'll send it. Maybe we'll link it when we release this podcast, written by a gentleman who, if I ever get fired, I want him to write that article for me, because it was a glowing review of your job as a city manager and how unfair and unjust your firing was. But I doubt I'll ever sit in a meeting where my career hangs in the balance of 3 people, and there's really nothing you can do about it, even if 20,000 or how many residents you have, 100,000 residents in Doral or more.
Doral is almost 100. You're right.
And they're super happy with what you're doing, but these 3 people on
They were.
the board aren't. I mean, you had people from all walks of life coming up, a very diverse group of people supporting you, and that article talks about it and gives a link where you can watch the shit show that was that council meeting. But ultimately, at some point, you had to have known that you were a 3-2 vote. There was nothing anyone was going to say about it. So what's that like, sitting in there, staying mature, handling your emotions, knowing that everything is almost a formality and all these great things that are being said about you is almost like a thing at a funeral or something? Like, there's nothing you can do about it. You just have to let this wave wash over you, and then you have to deal with your emotions and the fallout of that. Post that. What's that like? That had to be tough.
It was one of the most difficult things I've ever done. And I've gone through some things in my life. I lost my father at 19, so that, kind of close to the fact that having to hear everybody say, no, we want to keep her. And your fate is in these 3 individuals' hands. Yes, by far was one of the most heartbreaking things I've ever had to personally experience. And it was actually kind of like more of this like outer body experience where you're like almost like you're watching it from somewhere else. Like, is this really happening? Is it like a dream or more like a nightmare? That's really how I can explain it. I have yet to go back to watch the video because I may have a little bit of a traumatic experience.
You lived it. Yeah.
It was really sad to see a community come together and basically speak for you and say, and all the people that spoke, not one person came out saying something negative. To then watch these individuals sit up there and have this straight face with like, we already know we're going to vote kind of thing. Like, the information presented to them didn't matter. And that's why I know that I did nothing wrong, because it didn't matter what information was provided. It was something else, something bigger than me. At the end of the day, what ends up happening is that, as we are public servants in whatever capacity we are, all of us that work for government, the community wanted a certain thing and they didn't. And sitting up there knowing already, and I knew a little bit before the meeting that it was going to not go the way I wished it would have gone, which was me sitting there. I still said to myself, you know what, you got to sit through this because people need to know the truth. And there's only one way they can know the truth. And it's sitting and letting people see it for themselves, because no matter what you say or what you do, it's just words versus visually experiencing it. And I had to sit there because previous to that, Doral has a history of the manager, this happening to the manager where they have a 3-vote out and then the manager disappears. I was a parks director when 2 of my managers, similar situation, just resigned. Like, why? What happened? And in 5 days, they were gone. No comment, no nothing. My leader, the person I report to, all of a sudden disappears. And I don't understand why. And then it leaves you up for those questions of like, well, what happened? And did they do something wrong? And that the doubt it's just not good to have. So after sitting through 2 or 3 of those meetings in the 14 years I was with Doral, I said to myself, I'm not going to allow history to repeat itself or be bullied out. And let's go through this. And still at the end, through that meeting, I was still praying that maybe something changes. Maybe somebody sees the light and sees that politically that wasn't the right decision either. But it wasn't about politics either. It was more than that. So I sat through it, and staff had to sit there and watch all of it. And so, but at least people know the truth. As you said, the community newspaper that did a good story on it. There's a lot of negative stories right now. And it's sad to have to read it, because I still read it, because you think to yourself, okay, well, I'm going to read it because I have to know what they're saying. And now, especially going with the city of Miami, which is always controversial, always. It's unfortunate because they do have a lot of great things going for them, that people believe what they read without actually doing the information. And
intestinal fortitude you showed, because first of all, those people that felt the pressure politically and just resigned didn't get their day in court. And you did. You got to have your grievances aired actually on behalf of the residents. You didn't really get to say anything yourself, but you kind of got your day in public court, and they aired your grievances on your behalf, spoke highly for you. So, and I have said multiple times, it's a terrible job. I understand why a city manager gets a contract and why a public works director or parks and rec director doesn't, because I don't get string out in front of a board, and I am never subject to a 4-3. You were a 3-2 vote, but in my city, I could gain or lose 4 council members tomorrow, and I'm not in fear of my job. You know what I mean? Like that's something that everyone in our government structure knows. A new council comes in, if they get a different majority, they could vote that city manager out. And so I completely understand why y'all have a contract. I'm so happy you negotiated what you did. I think every city manager deserves that, but you're still doing it. You didn't go back into Parks and Rec. You're going into a city that's known for being crazy, beautiful town, Miami, but known for having that political infighting, and you're going right back into the ACM role. What is it about city management that makes you say this job appeals to me?
So just going back to that meeting. So one of the things with Parks and Rec, because I think that it allows you to get to know a community really well. We're the ones, the boots in the ground. We're the ones helping, whether it's a senior citizen, a person with disabilities, the kid on the street that plays on the sidewalk doesn't have a green space to play at. Mm-hmm. We're the ones that connect with those individuals and bring them into our green spaces to let them know that they're all equal, that it doesn't matter, where they came from or what cultural background they had. And so with Doral, I had that connection. So the best side of that, and you always try to look at the positive of it, is that because of my Parks and Rec background, those people were there. Mm-hmm. Because of what I did for that community back from 2005 to 2019, those people were there. They knew who I was for real. And regardless of what newspaper talks and says whatever, they knew what I had done for them, and that I was an individual. So from the Parks and Rec background, being a city manager, being in Parks and Rec also prepares you for that other role. Because why? Because we handle budgets, because we handle capital projects, because we handle the people side and personnel side. We handle every aspect. It's like a little mini city within a city. We handle the security. We handle all of that. We are responsible for all of that. So it prepares you to be that next stepping stone. And if good people like we all, when we sign up to be in Parks and Rec, we do it because we love it, because it's in our heart, because it did something for us as a kid, because of the connection that it does with the community, that you get to put a smile on those people's faces. You turn their frowns upside down. Like it's so nice. So then going into the city manager, well, why I want to continue doing this, because we can fight harder for those Parks and Rec programs, for those capital projects to finish, so that the community really benefits from the taxes that they're paying, so that they can continue, having a better life, a better quality of life. That's what we do. And from sitting in those seats, we as Parks and Rec professionals can continue to push it even stronger. That's why I go back to it.
So to piggyback off that question a little bit in a different capacity, I'm the opposite of Shane in that I've actually in everything, but I've actually shown, and I've told him interest. I have a major interest of going that direction in the near future or whenever time. I don't know when, But at what point when you were in the park and rec world did you say, okay, now is the time? Or, what was that like clicking point of saying, I'm going to get out of park and rec to go to city management or ACM, whatever it was? Because I've contemplated that. I've talked to Tom about that before, and I'm definitely interested. But like, what was it for you that gave you the courage to make that jump?
This one was the reason why I jumped. It was the leadership. So the mayor that got elected, Mayor Chrissy Fraga, she just had a different view that her as a politician wasn't your average politician. She's the one that fought for me on the dais.
She spoke with you, right? Didn't she speak at one of the NRPA presentations?
Yes, I brought her up to NRPA to see what we were all about from a national perspective,
That's
because
cool.
it just changes them completely. Like they see it and they're like, this is real stuff. I'm like, yeah, you think we just play around? No pun intended. So when these leaders come in as an elected official, because there is a lot of elected officials that go in, and why are they going in to be an elected official? What are their reasonings behind it? So that motivated me to see someone in that leadership role that really cared, truly, really cared about the community. And that inspired me to be like, okay, I can take this next step and leap of faith with her. And so that was a change. It was the leadership that was in place, not knowing that one of them would, turn on her. It wasn't about me, it was on her.
Yeah, the article highlighted the mayor's response. She was very disappointed in how that all went that night as well.
Yeah. So Jay, to answer your question, it really, you see a lot of things sitting in the Parks and Recreation director role, and then you're like, and then you try to push for something, and then the assistant city manager, the manager pushes back because they don't feel like it's that important. Yet already how this will affect the community, first off, how this would affect politically. It ends up being a positive for all of them. So I'm just kind of like, come on, guys, but then the manager has to look at it from a budgeting perspective and seeing if they have the financial aspect, where I think that when we sit in those roles, we can look at it and be more creative because of the way we have been trained, because of what we have gone through, that we have a different perspective and look at it. So that's when I made the switch, when I was like, okay, I can do this and really help them still continue to, give money to streets and public works and police, because police is, but then working with police to then get the chief and be like, hey, this is really important. Like, we should really work with parks on this. So doing that as a director already, I was already doing it. Whereas then I would have somebody that might have been more of a bureaucrat or red tape, or, scared of the politicians or whatever the case is, and not making the right decision for the right reasons. That's where I took the switch, that I was like, I can fight this without being disrespectful and still getting through to it.
So I get having someone back you is huge, right? So having leaders that you believe in. And I also get the mindset of, we're making or enhancing people's qualities of lives, right? And that's something now, big picture, there's more out there that you can do. It's not just Parks and Recreation. On the flip side of it, and it's kind of a tough question, because I've been in quite, conversations with Jay. I've seen others in our field that have taken the leap, and then others who have taken the leap and then said, no, it's not for me. I got to get out of this. And so, for you to stick with it is obviously very impressive. Shane, you mentioned that fortitude and that just strength in your character to go through the adversity and still want to, have that desire to lead in that capacity. How do you justify the darker side of it? And I say that in the terms of, we make people happy. I would say 99% of the comments we get are positive. Yes, we get someone who complains about something really silly on a random basis in Parks and Rec, but that's not the case in the global piece of that government entity, right? Not always, right? You get people who come to these meetings, city meetings, town meetings, whatever it is, and they want to talk about every little thing that bothers them about the place that they made a decision to move to. They made that choice, but yet they want to change it. They want it because it affects them. So, and then of course you've got the other departments. And so to even go further in that direction, what I've seen is Parks and Rec. You said it, your mayor came and saw everything that we have to offer, and they got to see what we love about those conferences, how great the people are, how friendly, how they actually want to be at the conferences. It's not just a conference that you go to because you're mandated to go to it to keep up a certification. People want to be there, and you said they have it in their heart. I don't know that that's always the same with every employee in municipal work, right? Some of them may see it as, hey, this is a great municipal job. I got great benefits. And they don't truly have the heart to be there for the improvement or betterment of the community. Whereas Parks and Rec, I feel like that's the reason. How do you deal with that? What's the incentive that makes it worth it to step away from Parks and Rec where it's, pretty much all positive?
Safe.
And you're going to it's safe, and
Yeah.
you're going to deal with a lot of the negative, which could potentially, I would say, really drain you as an individual at times.
So you're right, Tom. That's a heavy loaded question.
Tom's
That's
are.
what I do. That's what
And
I
they
do.
take about 10 minutes.
I know, known that for a long time.
Yeah.
Which is great because it helps you like think even deeper, right? And so I don't, call me crazy, but I just feel like we have a motivation like that. We can motivate more people to have to change, instead of just being that like, well, this is just my job. I do that 9 to 5 thing, check boxes kind of thing. That we give people more of a purpose. And I feel like I can get people to really see that even though they may be the permit clerk or maybe they're the the receptionist, and their position is just as important as my position as a city manager or a director's position, because they're the person greeting the person at the door, and they will start that interaction. And so you start to switch it more as forget what's on the job description, but then you can turn, and I just feel like I can do that. So those people, and those that don't want to, that's fine. You want to be that 9 to 5 person, that's great. Just do your 9 to 5 job good, and you're going to be fine at the end of the day. And that's very clear with anybody out there. And you always go into these leadership roles explaining your leadership type, and then people can see, well, where am I in that realm kind of thing. And I go, and as much as exhausting as it is, and you're right, because now you have to balance, as Shane already mentioned, my 4 boys, your family at home. Is 8 hours enough to do that? No, I was working 12 to 16 hours but I love it. I really love it. And it made me a happier person. So then I came home happy. It's one of those things that if you get into that, Jay, it's talking to your wife and your family and sitting down with them. And I sat with everybody and explained to everybody, this is what's going to happen. And this is how this is. And it's not because I don't want to be home. It's just because I feel like I have a bigger duty and it going through all of that still having that balance. So starting, it was difficult. I know now with Miami, I'm going to try to bring a bigger balance where I was like, okay, well, I'll stay late Monday, Wednesdays, but I'll be home Tuesday, Thursdays, and Fridays, like a decent human being, to make sure I get the kids to basketball or to soccer. It's that balancing act to make sure that I could accomplish some of those bigger things, Tom, that we kind of are like the black and the darkness inside, to try to see if you can get through that, knowing that you may not, and that's okay too. You can't do everything. You got to just leave that aside. And then balance all that stuff out so that you can still be happy at home, and your spouse, which is very important, to be very happy with you as well. So, it's, I don't like being safe either. So it's your personality too, like being like, oh, okay, I'm cool. Like, okay, now you're comfortable. And what's next? Once you're comfortable, you're like, no, I don't want to be comfortable. I want to see what's next. What else can I do? What else can we do as a team? And inspiring those people to come together, because some people are now leaving the city of Doral. The IT director resigned. He doesn't want to work for the person they put in place. The planning and zoning director resigned yesterday. They don't want to work for someone like that. The procurement director is resigning next week. She called me and told me. It's a domino effect, which shows the leadership does matter. And I push them to please stay. You got to good people need to keep the city moving. But if you don't have that, and now with the generational, it's different. People need a purpose. That majority of people feel like they have to have a purpose. Here's your purpose. Explain to them that they have a purpose. And if you're just, check box, that most directors are not checkbox people. They want to move their departments forward. They want to do things. They want to collaborate. You don't want to work with someone that's going to stab you in the back. Like that's all part of that. And you start to show that. And that's where our nation's going. It's in that direction of like leaders and motivators, because AI is coming in, and AI is the one that's going to do the checkbox stuff. So where does that leave us as humans?
You just touched on something about leadership, and I went through not even close to the same degree of what you went through. But I worked for a municipality where I had 4 town managers in 6 years. And it was just this reoccurring theme that our elected officials didn't look at leadership as who their leader should be, who the town manager should be. And it was more, well, I like this person because, you know, they're friends of this person, or they, you know, politically inclined to help us do that. And it was this domino effect, just like you said, that everyone left at certain points because there was such poor leadership, and the planning director left and the finance director left, and it was all these different things. And it was just like, you know, too many times have I seen it now, not just there, but other municipalities and other cities, that like, it really comes down to leadership. And if you don't have the right person in place to like lead that team, and unfortunately, we're not always able to make those decisions as who your leader is or who the top of the org chart really is. But what I'll also say is I saw a job posting probably about 6 months ago, maybe a year ago, for a city manager position. And this is kind of what, like you said too, about like what motivates you and drives you, is the way they described the position for the city manager was amazing to me, because it talked about, you know, are you a person that loves to build teamwork? Are you a person that loves strategic planning? Do you want to build, you know, collaboration team for the city to go to the next level, and all these different things that like we do it on a park and rec basis all the time in our bubble, but not citywide, not countywide. And I think you get the right person in a city leadership role or an ACM role, and that you can do that and build that teamwork component. There's nothing like it. And I think kind of hearing you talk about it, it almost made me realize like maybe we're like two cut from the same cloth, because I like that. What motivates me too is like being able to build that leadership component, but being the leader of that team to put those people in that place work to be the best they can be from a city manager perspective. There's going to be nothing better than that if you have the right team and you can build the team.
I think the working genius, and we've talked about this before for those that have listened to the podcast, has made a lot of things more clear for me in the workflow process. But the word discernment in my career has never been more evident than since the working genius came to our lexicon, and just looking up and seeing how important that is. Like, if you don't have the right discerner, if the wrong person gets hired, or they hire one wrong person and that person gets to make some decisions over, you know, I obviously believe it was the wrong decision to let you go, Barbie. And then because of that, they're seeing that flow. There was no discernment among those three. And the downstream impact of that is incredible, right? And I think I want to touch on something else real quick. And this isn't something that we've talked about before on this podcast, but I think you could speak to it, Barbie. And I think everyone could feel some sort of connection to it, is what public service does to us, we're okay with. We sign up for it. But what public service does to our spouses is sometimes an unintended consequence that they have to deal with. And I couldn't imagine Danny and your 4 kids and how they felt after that meeting, and probably if we gave him truth serum, how he feels right now. First of all, just so the podcast knows, this is a RecLess podcast exclusive. She's not talking with the news stations, so y'all can ask her any questions, and we'll be big in South Beach for a couple days because this is an exclusive. But I couldn't imagine what Danny thought as a lawyer, and then as someone who serves publicly the community in the school board capacity. I couldn't imagine watching my wife be, you know, torn limb from limb. I would be furious about it. But my wife will go to a farmer's market or even sit at a wine bar, and she's learned over the years to not to say her husband works for a city or the city, because even though Tom's right, 99% of the people have a good interaction, specifically Parks and Rec and trails and the things we do. Someone can say, oh, I don't like the bend at this trail, or there's always trash at this certain section. And that's not what my wife was trying to get into on a Friday night at happy hour. You know, she's just trying to relax, and all of a sudden you're hearing someone say something. So when you had that conversation with Danny and the kids, I'm going to go into city management, and then for that to happen, how was their reaction when you then said, hey, I'm going to go do this all over again as an ACM in Miami? Like, I know he's in government and he gets it, and I know he's in the public eye and he gets it, but surely he can't love the idea that you're going back up the hill with the target on your head again. Like, that's just probably something any spouse would want to protect their partner from dealing with.
Yeah, he's watching that. He did tell me that it was very difficult to watch. During the meeting, he texted me. He's like, I'm right around the corner if you need me. I'm like, what are you going to do? You can't do anything. You need to just sit back and watch that. And he says he was at work. He put it at work and that his boss would walk in, and he works for a developer right now. He's the attorney for a developer. So he had it on Zoom, and he said the boss would walk in, and he's like, that he was at some points he was crying he couldn't believe it. He was just like, I can't, and he felt helpless as a husband, as a spouse, and he couldn't, he's like, you kept your composure. He's like, you should have been a little stronger. And I was like, that's not who I am. I'm not gonna fight people. I don't fight people. But he said it was very difficult. The 3 and the 6-year-old were like, wait, because Doral was across the city hall of Doral was actually across the street from their school.
Wow.
And they're like, you're not gonna be at City Hall anymore? Like, you're not going to be across the street? So that by far was the worst, and probably sitting through the meeting was my children being like, but mommy's not going to be there anymore. And that broke my heart. And then the 11 and 10-year-old were very like, but there's bad people. And I'm like, oh yes, there's bad people. And I wanted them to hear from me, because since they go to school in Doral, the last thing I would want them to hear is a rumor. And so, but they couldn't grasp the fact that I had done nothing wrong, yet I was terminated. They could not, that did not get into their minds. So we're like, it is what it is. God does things for a reason. There's a reason things happen, and sometimes they're bad. So the teaching there was more about, sometimes bad things need to happen so better things come, so that they kind of get that concept too, that it's okay to do it. And now going back into it, yes, not only my children and my family and my mother watched the meeting and she couldn't believe it. My mother-in-law watched the meeting, and she had a little bit of an anxiety attack the next morning, had to go to the hospital because it was just heartbreaking, apparently, watching it. Not being able to do something that for someone you care about, that you're like, this is ridiculous. You can tell it was completely wrong, and that the votes were there, which is the other part of government. You're like, the votes are there already. Like, they can't, like, that's not okay. They couldn't grasp that. And unfortunately, we know, working in these atmospheres, that happens. So talking to him about it again, my husband 100% is like, you go back out there. He's one of those, like, you can do this again. Like, he knows that I'm strong, so he's all about it. My mom knows the same thing. She was very like supportive, whatever you need, honey. And don't get me wrong, the last 8 weeks have been awesome. In 21 years of public service, since I was 18 years old, I've always given it, whether I was a part-time employee cleaning bathrooms, I cleaned the best bathrooms ever, to a parks director spending 10, 12-hour days working on a master plan, and dealing with the politics. So even a city manager, just getting my team together and making sure that the right people had the right seats on the bus and the bus was going in the right direction. I always gave it that 110%. So it's, I say those things because no matter what it is, they know that I'm going to go back into it and continue to do that. But the time that I've had off also made me see, wow, like I really needed to just refocus on certain things. I organized closets in the house, color coordinated things, throw toys, the whole thing. So that was really nice to have 8 weeks of clarity. Don't get me wrong, I mourned and I cried and I was like, this broke my heart. And I'm going to use Doral, and I say this now, that Doral was like a bad boyfriend that did me harm, and I'll never go back there because they broke my heart. Not the community. They don't deserve it. What happened there in that community was wrong. Like the politicians were they didn't do the right thing. And so that is just something that traumatically I was like, I can't go back to that or work for people that don't have the same values. So to your point, Jay and Tom, about like, it's like the value is really important. So if they have things like they're looking for teamwork and the collaboration, that's where you want to be. And these elected officials need to understand, if you want good people working for you, that you got to have those type of values, that vision of like wanting to really progress and have different thought process. The biggest thing right now, and I'm gonna, I know it's parks, it's a RecLess, and we talk about Parks and Rec, but there's also, we always say neither one of us are red or blue, that we're all green, right? Because we work in Parks and Rec. But it does come in there, and it's like, why can't we all just work together? We can all disagree on things and be respectful about it and keep moving it forward. Because when we start to think differently, we can actually come to a place where where whatever that information is, whatever that project, program, item is, it could be made better if somebody thinks differently, so that we can put it in there and make sure that it's the best project moving forward, the best program or idea, whatever it is. So I think that we need to grasp that and hold on to that and keep saying those things out loud, so that we as a community, as a city, as a state, as a nation can come together and really focus on what's right, instead of fighting each other all the time. And that's part of what it was too, by the way, which was the red and blue thing. So I was like, okay, not against me, but the fact that the mayor was a certain way and they wanted to get at her, so they got rid of me to get to her, because there's no other way of getting to her without coming through me.
That's a great point. We had a Joe Turner talk about red and blue equals green, and that it was always about making sure Parks and Rec were important. And I think that's obviously a larger discussion, but the public discourse right now, it's everyone's on one side or the other, and you almost can't give an inch, And I mean, Jay is always wrong. I'm always right. We come together every week and do this podcast, this
Good.
award-winning 12 people viewed podcast, so I think it can be done. I think we're
going to get your numbers up. You know that, right? I'm going to
Right.
be sending this out.
Yeah.
Love it.
I mean, I think it's at least 13.
Yeah.
So
4 of them are Shane's kids, and then
Yeah,
my
right.
wife, your wife. So.
Yep. Yeah. No,
So we'll have
we're
Danny
doing
and their
well.
4 kids. We're fixing to double.
Let's shift over to the lighter side of things. You've went through some tough times, and you've landed on your feet. You've got a great opportunity in front of you. I'll try to keep it simple. What are you really excited for moving into this next role? What are some projects or just some things that you've identified? And I know it's, you're fairly,
Because this is an agency you worked for too. You were
Right.
the director here. Yeah.
Yeah.
you've
I
got the
got
familiarity.
Yeah. So we established their parks master plan. They hadn't had a parks master plan since 2007. So I left the city with finalizing the master plan, which they did in July of last year. So coming back and really implementing some of those projects and programs and the plan to move it forward is something I'm excited about. Continuing to move some of the capital projects that they started with certain communities. So the city of Miami, different than Doral. Doral is a great community full of diverse, it's a very Hispanic, 90% of the community is Hispanic, whereas Miami may not have that bigger percentages. There's a very good diverse, different types of Hispanics. There's a lot of people coming from New York, from California. We have a big population in the African American side of it. And it's one of those things that I think that dynamic, that diversity is even better to even work, because it's different. There's different cultures, and trying to implement some of those things on what they need. And the economic perspective from them as well is something that it goes from condos on the bay that are like $2 million to people making $20,000 a year, and that's their income coming in as a household. Like, you're talking about a huge diversity of those are 2 separate needs, right? And so like working within that realm to basically provide what they need versus everybody gets the same thing, because that's not right either. And that's what I'm excited about, like trying to establish that.
What departments are you over?
Obviously Parks and Rec.
Did you promote internally? Did they promote internally to replace you for that?
They ended up promoting the assistant parks director, which I inherited when I got there, Chris Evans.
Okay.
So he is now
great relationship.
Yeah, we have a great relationship. I will oversee solid waste, code compliance, IT, GSA, which is general services. They handle property management and things of that nature, and human services, which handles a lot of the child cares and homelessness, which is a big challenge in Miami.
Miami is one of those coastal towns that has to consider, and all 3 of y'all were actually on my think tank. All 3 of y'all's names are on my master plan. When we talk about master plans, Barbie was there when she was I think we had you when you were with the city of Miami. But one of the things I learned from that master plan on the national group specifically is I had folks on East and West Coast towns, coastal towns, and the country's shrinking. There are definitely concerns with what ocean levels are doing to some of these cities that are along our coastal areas. Is that something that the city of Miami is having to try to deal with? How do y'all deal with an issue like that?
I don't know if shrinking There is coastal issues, water, flooding. They are working on some of these resiliency programs. And it's funny, yesterday was, somebody's leaving the city of Miami, obviously, coincidentally, and then I'm replacing them. And the resiliency director saw me at their farewell activity yesterday, and she was like, I really want to work with you because resiliency and Parks and Rec are so close together. She's like, I have a lot of ideas, but I feel like I never can get through. And I'm like, okay, well, let's work on it. Let's get together. Let's all get together and see what we can do to really push the needle forward. But I know that they're like Miami Beach was working on a huge resiliency plan, because it's you're saying that nation's shrinking, but it's more like there's a flooding issue coming in.
Right. Yeah.
And so then therefore, yes, it ends up becoming smaller areas, but it's all about raising the land, basically. So, and I went to somebody's house. They bought a property, about 4 acres, and they showed me, we went to an area where we stood there and we looked up, and I'm not kidding you, it was 7 feet up. Naturally, Miami was in a certain area, and you can see that they have now filled about 7 to 8 feet so that the house next door can build. And we literally stood there, and I'm like, okay, so, but your house is down here. And he's like, I know, that's okay, we'll figure it out. And I'm like, but you're gonna get a flood, like you're gonna have flood. And he's like, we're working on that, but it's like just to show you the level of elevation already, and still it needs to go up higher. So they're just like, that's what they're working on, which I find to be okay. Well, now your neighbor's higher than you, so now what happens to your house, kind of thing.
Yeah.
So those are things that we really are real issues, because somebody may have the money to do that, but others may not. And so what happens to those that really don't have the money and they have flooding in their house, even making it more challenging for them? There's a lot of stuff when it comes to parks too, and I think some of you guys have done these projects where the park is actually where it holds the stormwater. And then you can still build on top of it. And then maybe 1 or 2 days you can't use that park, but then it all drains in 1 or 2 days. I think that they need to start doing that. Does it more costly in the beginning? Yes. But is it less costly later on? 100%. So it's showing all those values to doing those things.
I got a question for you. You mentioned earlier, or I think Shane mentioned it, that Doral was close to 100,000 residents. Obviously, Miami is much larger.
Almost
and
5
I think so I mean, you're talking 5 times the size. And from a park and rec world, I think a lot of people have made transitions to go to different municipalities, different cities and towns, and that we can effectively know how to program differently or grow things differently from a city manager perspective. Like, what does that look like, serving 100,000 residents versus 500,000? Is there something that you will look at doing differently, or is there a different approach to things that you're thinking?
It's funny, I was talking to a friend the other day, and he's like, you need to get to know the people first. So no matter where you are and how many people you're serving, your team matters, right? You're the people that you work with next to, and your staff under you, and even the elected officials and leadership above you, that matters. And it's getting to know them, their personalities, and knowing what works with them and what doesn't. So number one is figuring that out in the first 30 to 60 days, right? Like starting to get to know those individuals. So from that perspective, to me, people are important, and that's what I want to do first. So I'm never going to change that, my heart perspective. Like I bring my heart into it because I think it's important to have those people together. From there, it's then figuring out those challenges on what is not working and what's working. And those people that now you have established a relationship with can tell you that the departments are experts. I know that from being a director, we are the expert. Give them that power, that authority to provide you that information to see where it is that we can or cannot do things, obviously based on the budget and based on the support. So figuring that out in the 60 to 90 days. So I'm trying to create a plan right now on that. So no matter how big something is, and now working, and Joral's budget, just to give you a point of reference, the city's budget is $106 million. My budget in Parks and Rec in Miami was $86 million, just Parks and Rec. That's where you're like, but at the end of the day, those are numbers still, and you have to split up the funding. And it's where is the funding being used? Your budget is like your Bible. It's like, this is what it is, and where is the money being used wisely, where is it not? So figuring that out and looking into that and just kind of working my way in a plan for that. As far as serving the residents, which is where your question comes in, is there's 5 districts. So now we're in a district-based government, and we have 5 commissioners that oversee each district. So in reality, it's like 5 little mayors. I've said it to them. I'm not hiding that. And they want the best for their their district. It's about my district, but there also has to be a point where you did get elected by your district because that's how it's based. But if there's a need in another district, it's trying to inform them that information. At the end of the day, I informed you and you still want to make a different decision, that's fine. But allow me to give you the information so that you can make that decision. Now you tell me you don't want to hear it, that's a different story too, but okay, it's fine, no problem. But the information's out there and at least people know about it. So it will be different from that perspective because you are serving 5 different districts and they are different. And even within those different districts, there's different communities that are different. So understanding all of that and getting to know those communities, which when as parks director for the city of Miami, we had over 160 or 165 parks, and each district had different, let's say District 5 has 42 parks, and they were really, there were some big ones and small ones, but where another district may have had 30, and they're really small. So then the green spaces on that was different. And it's like, what kind of communities are those? Trying to just meet those individuals. Then you have those leaders within those communities, get to know them, see what their needs are, because it's impossible to get to know everybody. But working those different dynamics where I think that from department directors, they will know also what the needs are, and then working that way. It's going to definitely be different and bigger. And those are the challenges that we have. But I think, and I'm going to bring IT into this and I'm so glad I'm overseeing them, because now with the technology, I think that's the kind of stuff that IT departments really need to get going on, because that's where that will help us versus these community face-to-face workshops, which are great, but a majority of the community in Miami are working class and they can't go to a 6 o'clock workshop on a Wednesday. So how do you get to those people? And how do you get to the people, on a Saturday and Sunday that are taking their kids to soccer and they're in soccer all day? There's that. And I think from a technology perspective, we need to be either with the private sector or ahead of them. And we should be, and we can be, and we need to be. And so that's, from that perspective, I think that will help at least me, and I think the rest of the team in Miami, to help get that information and that data in order to better serve those residents.
Well, I think we talked earlier about why park and rec professionals make good city leadership roles. And what you just said, getting the community, there's no other department staff outside of park and rec that connects with the community more than we do. So we're already going to have boots on the ground and know the staff. So for you to say you want to get out and meet the community, that's what we do. That's what we've always done and we always will do. So it makes that transition so much easier for someone in a leadership role for city government.
One of those questions that I think everybody's going to ask, and Jay, you're experiencing it. I've had some discussions with people about potentially the city management, town management type of positions. Is it hard to separate yourself from, quote unquote, if indeed is your first love, parks and recreation, right? So what I mean by that is I've had this conversation with someone that was, if you were looking to get promoted from within, how do you separate yourself and take a step back when you're seeing someone else step into those shoes that you once filled and they're doing it their way? It's, that's gotta be a challenge, right?
Oh, 100%. Tom, that's funny. I hired an ACM when I was a city manager in Doral, and he tells the Parks and Recreation director, he goes, "You have the hardest job. You have the hardest job."
Because that was your department at one time.
That's right.
Yep.
That's right. So if I can say it in a few words, it's absolutely, because there is no detaching. That's unrealistic, because you love that. It's I know that we did it this way, but I had to, at one point I gave the Parks and Rec department to the deputy city manager, and I'm like, handle them. But then he would come to me and he's like, you want to be part of this. I'm like, okay, fine. So you try so that they don't feel that, you let them, I guess some of these leadership books that I, read, or we have to remind ourselves, something we watch, we tell ourselves with anything, you may know the answer, right? You get into the room with all your people, your executive team, your core team, and then you know the answer, but don't ever say it. Let's see what everybody else has to say. So it's I have to remind myself to allow people to speak first and see what they have to say. Because then when it gets to me, I'm like, I guess my answer wasn't that right.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why you have good people that work for you. So it's kind of reminding those kind of things. And it's a constant reminder when it comes to that, the Parks and Rec department, that you just can't seem to get away from. And me and the parks director had really good conversations, and she felt that she had to really prove herself. That's the other thing. Like, it's like, oh God, I got to prove myself now. And I'm like, I want to help you. And if you need help, I'm here to help you. If you need money, guess who's going to give it to you? I'm going to, like, now you have a champion sitting here. So let's talk about it. And she kept putting things on herself, where we had and it was 8 o'clock at night. I was still at City Hall. And so was she, because that's how we are, right? And we had a really good conversation, and then she realized, and she let it go, and she started to like, hey, I need this, I need that. I'm like, you got it. You got it. I want you to succeed. Like, and moving forward, regardless of what occurs, like that's, and she started to really speak up after that really hard conversation about her taking everything on versus seeing that there's a lot of help around her, up and down. Like, so it's hard, Tom. I can tell you that I don't think you could ever be detached from it.
Okay, so we're going to do a couple rounds of round robin. Hopefully we can get maybe even 2, 3, 4 rounds in. These questions may be career oriented. They may be personal oriented. We're going to ask you a question. We try to get as quick as answer as possible, and we keep going. Okay. So I led the guys off with an intriguing spot in the world that they'll probably never live in, but they're always intrigued by. When we were talking about that, did anything come up for you?
It's funny. I heard Jay talk about the Caribbean and the Grand Cayman, and I mean, that's why I love Miami, because of the weather. Like when you, Tom, were talking about snow, I was like, what? No, I'm sorry. I just can't, it has to be somewhere hot. And I've always told myself, when I retire, I want to go down to Key West and be a kayak, like a tour guide for kayaking and going through the waterways. Like, I love it. I love being outside. We take our kids, different places in Florida. I mean, there's no better to like start getting to know, your state, and then get to know other states, and then domestically. A lot of people love to travel outside of the United States because they feel that. And I feel like, well, I don't even know the United States. I want to go get to know Florida. So we've taken little trips here and there to do that. And I fall in love with so many of them. Like, okay, there's a place called Crystal River. I would never live there in Florida, but I absolutely love visiting it because it's just absolutely gorgeous. There's natural springs that come out. The manatees come from, the weather's cold. And in February, you have hundreds and hundreds of manatees all gathered over these springs that are in these little rivers. You get to go see them. You get to swim with them. It's so amazing. The water's 73 degrees all year long. It's gorgeous. I mean, the people are so nice. Everywhere else, people are so much nicer than in Miami. Like everywhere else.
I would love to see Shane swim with manatees.
They wouldn't be able to tell who was who.
Oh gosh, come on. So let me ask a follow-up to that question then. So I didn't mention Florida when Shane asked the question because I go to Florida a lot. However, I don't go to the Florida that you're describing. I go to Disney World.
Oh.
Do you? I know it's not.
I loved her face. That face
I
was
want to
amazing.
know. Have you ever taken your family?
Oh yeah, my kids love that stuff. So I promised my kids before I went back to work, where do you guys want to go? And they were like, Legoland. I'm like, I've never been to Legoland though. This will be my first time going to Legoland. So, but that's what they want to do. They're boys and they like to build, and I rather them go build stuff than, do other stuff they shouldn't be doing. Which Florida just passed one of the laws for YouTube, and like not allowing kids to be on the YouTube, the script, the ones, the little shorts, they call them shorts or something.
Oh, it's reels or whatever they are.
Reels. Yeah. They're just, it's wild. But yeah, of course I go, Tom, to Disney. There's just so many people.
Before Jay goes, let me tell my Disney story, because I've never been to Disney. But my youngest daughter wanted to go to Disney, and I think
he told her no.
I think Tom knows this. We went to New Orleans, and City Park has a little. If you've ever been to New Orleans, City Park is their Central Park, and they have a little section that's a little themed playground area, and I told her that was Disney, and she thought she had been to Disneyland for about 5 years of her life.
Disney World, first of all, they're different. Disneyland. So, all right, one quick follow up to my question, Jade. Not to interrupt you or.
It's okay. I'll give you 2 questions.
All right, you give me 2. All right, in true form, which city or town in Florida am I going to if I want to get the best food? Just one. If I had to go to one place.
Miami has really great food. It really has. It's just you got to go to like. Actually, Doral has pretty good restaurants right now. Brickell, Little Havana. They just like and all different types of different Hispanic cuisines. Honestly, anywhere you hit Miami, you can find a great food place. It's great. If you're ever down here, I can tell you which ones you got to go
Okay.
to really try them.
RecLess on the road.
I like it.
There we go.
If you want to party, go to Kiki's. It's on the river, and the Miami River is absolutely gorgeous with the history that it has. And then they have great food, fun drinks, great music, and you're really getting that breeze. So
I'm gonna keep it in the food realm. Is there a city or a town outside of Florida that is your favorite place when you go on vacation or for food that you travel to?
oh, food.
Like a foodie destination.
I'm not a foodie though.
And I was gonna
so-
say it's all dependent on if someone's a foodie.
Yeah, no, that's fair. That's fair. I mean, Tom and Shane and I, we talk about food often. And, even when we're like planning for NRPA conferences, we're always like looking at restaurants to go out together and breakfast joints. So, food is a common way for us to come together.
This is almost a food podcast. If we're honest, we could talk about it that much.
When we do RecLess on the road, it will be.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like Indian food is great too. Like I love Indian food, and there's some pretty good restaurants down here for Indian food. Like the little hole in the wall. I love hole in the walls. Those are the best by far.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, if we had Danny on here and we asked him, what are you obsessed with? What would he say? Whether it's a TV show, a movie, a thing, a
habit.
Yeah. What would he say you're obsessed with?
That I'm obsessed with?
Yeah.
Oh, I thought you meant what he's obsessed with.
No. What would he tattletale on you? What would he say, man? Barbie's obsessed with blank.
Work.
Fair.
He knows he's like, and he even tells me, he's like, I'm not your staff. I'm like,
I've heard that one before too.
I'm like, I'm not. I'm just trying to help you out with the kids. I have if my degree was initially in education, and I obviously there's 4 kids here, and I love children. Like I'm just trying to help him, guide him through. And there's a lot of testosterone. They're 4 boys.
If he would just listen, his life would be so much easier, right?
Can you guys tell him that? Can you tell him to please listen? That it's so much. And don't fight with the boys. Don't. It's like a constant. There's so much testosterone. It's like I'm always right. I'm like, okay, whatever.
It's just a part of their DNA. All right. I'm very intrigued always when we talk to someone who has experience in a big city and the big markets when it comes to sports. If you had to, and you're not going to get in trouble for it, which one of your major sports teams is the best to work with in Miami?
Ooh.
I don't know. You can't air this.
Well, then who are you a biggest fan of? Who are you a biggest?
We can't air that either, right?
The Miami Marlins have no doubt been amazing. Really, they really anything we need, and I say it because if we need a field to be redone, they're right there. If we need tickets for the Marlin games for the kids that can't afford them, they're right there. Food involved, vouchers, like it's just they do it for all the city. They really have tried to reconnect, and I think it's because baseball is dying.
Mm-hmm.
And that's unfortunate. I think that's where they're coming. They're really pushing their hardest to get back in there with baseball. And I'm a baseball. I played softball. I got my kids to play baseball, and then the soccer thing starts to happen again. And I'm like,
what has Messi done to Miami? Like, hadn't they been a huge impact?
a huge. Well, they're building. Well, we now again. I went back to it. They're building the stadium out here, and then
Can you get us some tickets?
I'm gonna try.
Have you met Messi?
I have not. I had him.
Do you look him eye to eye?
No, but I had my friends that know, and one of my friends was a security guard, and like the security that was with him got him to sign the soccer balls and sign like 4 hats for the kids and stuff like that. So
that's cool.
And he's like, "Oh, we'll put you on the field with the kids," and I'm like, "Okay." So yeah, the Marlins have been great.
We've asked this question to some previous guests, but you wake up tomorrow, you cannot work in city government, local government. What are you doing for a career path?
Or teaching. Let's take teaching out of there.
Yeah.
You took Tom.
No government services. What would you do?
I would.
Well, she said she'd be a kayak instructor,
yeah,
right? I guess.
that's when I retire. I want to sit. That's what I would do. But I would probably, I don't know. I thought about when during this process. So Jay, to your point, I had to think like, do I really want to go back into government?
Yeah.
And I thought about consulting and working on master plans, and I spoke to certain individuals that obviously we all know people, and they were like, if you're ready, come. And there was a lot of traveling. And that's the part I was like, my kids are little. I can't leave my kids too
Yeah.
long.
Yeah.
So, but that's what the other thing I thought about. I mean, I feel like I can do anything. I mean, once you work in this kind of field, you really have done so many things that you never were exposed to, like from contract like stuff to working and negotiating contracts, like the budget.
CIP.
It's just, yeah, the capital. It is wild, like the parks. And I want that story to be told louder. And if I can say that louder, like that's why I told my boss now in Miami, I'm like, I'm going to NRPA. I'm going to the Park Summit. I'm still going to be involved in parks because that is, it's really such a great place to really, and I had, before I left Doral, we had, there's 120 employees now in the Parks and Recreation Department. And I spoke to him about what parks can do for them, even as a part-time employee. And you never know who you're meeting out there. So always have your shirt tucked in. And the one thing I left them with, and this was huge, and I have a pet peeve, and I'm sure each of you have your pet peeves with your parks, right? Bathrooms. Clean the effing bathroom. People will love you because the bathroom is clean and you didn't even have to say anything.
People will not come back when the bathroom is dirty.
Absolutely. And don't you want your people to come back?
Yeah.
I mean, so that's one of they were all looked at me like I was crazy, but I was like, I go to the park and I don't have to go to the bathroom. I'm going to walk into that bathroom and I'm going to make sure it's clean. They were like, okay, but I got all of them off their cell phones because the generation coming in, our part-time employees are constantly on their phones or have those little things in their ears. And I'm like, who are you talking to? Oh, nobody. So why do you have it in your ear? It's like learning, adapting to them and explaining to them what purpose they have. But yes, clean the bathroom.
Well,
earbuds drive me crazy. That's one of my pet peeves.
Those little AirPods.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I got to deal with it every Friday with these two guys.
Now we just sound old. So
yeah, I can't even put them with me neither. I'm like, I can talk to a computer without having those things in my ear.
Probably a great time to wrap up. Hey, Barbie, thanks for the time. I really appreciate it. This was great.
Yeah.
No, I love you guys. You guys are awesome. I want to promote this and I think it's great. I've listened to a few
Well, we need it. We need the promotion. We're struggling.
It's really
get the
great.
kids. They'll give us extra counts for sure.
That's right. That's right.
Are you guys going to be doing this at NRPA? Like doing like a podcast live there or something?
We may.
Yeah.
We
might
fun.
just do that.
Do it as one of the classes and like get to, this is how you guys can get involved and randomly pick people to sit on a stool and have to answer questions. Make people uncomfortable.
We're in contract negotiations with Jay. He's holding out for season 3. So it's been a bit of a mess, but yeah, hopefully we can get together.
Yeah, we gotta work inside the house before we go outside.
He's got some demands. He wants to change the name.
What do you want to change it to, Jay?
I might just start my own podcast with just you and I, Barbie.
Oh, that sounds fun.
There you go.
Who needs these guys?
JT and who needs these guys?
JT. Who needs these guys? Well, Barbie, thank you so much for the time.
Yes.
We're gonna
Thank you,
let you
Jim.
hop off. We'll stay on for a little bit longer, but this was a lot of fun. It was really good having you.
No, thank you guys. And thank you for listening and whatever you need, you know, I'm here. Thank you, Jay.
Thanks, Barbie.
Best of luck in
For
Miami.
sharing that story too.
Thank you, Shane.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Appreciate you guys.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
I know that started off with a hard conversation. I think our industry needs to do that more, but man, I couldn't imagine going through what she went through.
No, and I didn't know the story. So it is very eye-opening because you've heard of that happening and it happens all the time, but not necessarily to people
right
firsthand. And it's not always people that come from our industry. So it's maybe not as impactful because we're not thinking about it from a personal perspective than more than just hey, it's political, it happens.
Yeah.
But then, when it's family and you got to figure out how that impacts your kids and your husband and your spouse. And it's a very personal, deep thing to think about. And, I give her so much credit for moving on and going to the next position.
Could you imagine watching someone you cared about, partner, siblings, family member of some sort, literally just being, and I'll send y'all the article and we should release it when we release the LinkedIn podcast, maybe put it in the comments where people can read it. This guy who I talked to her, she has no affiliation with, he articulated the issues, the political stuff, how much she was beloved so well, and still they made that decision. And I guess they have every right as representatives to make that decision, but there's nothing but proof that shows that was the wrong decision. And she stood there stoically completely took it, gathered her, her character, moved on, has got a great opportunity, and hopefully Doral still recovers from it, because that's what you hope now, is a town that she spent 15 years caring about is now struggling, and they're losing people left and right because of it. It's really sad in some ways that happens in government.
I didn't ask her this, but I'm like thinking about what you just said. Okay, people are leaving left and right. And she said it, like planning director left, the finance director left. And that happens often. From her perspective, obviously she went through a major issue and it hurts. And she said she, lost sleep and had tears. You almost wonder, like, do you almost want that city to fail a little bit?
Yeah.
Because of the harm and hurt they caused her, but also know that like it hurts the residents.
But as a city manager, she probably lives in that town, because that's usually what's required. So then she's watching across her town fail, which is tough too, right?
Yeah, she lives right across from school. And I think, knowing Barbie's character and the way she is, basically, I think she's above all of that, right? I doubt she wants the city to fail, but there's maybe a little bit of you that wants some of those elected officials to potentially fall.
Maybe not wanting the city to fail is the right term, but you at least want them to have some challenges and be like, oh man, we made a mistake.
We made the mistake.
Not necessarily fail, but like have some things come up and be like, ooh, I don't know that we did that correctly.
And the character to bow out the way she did, I'm flipping tables, guys.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Stay for the after show, because I'm flipping tables.
Well, flipping tables or expressing the emotion during the meeting, right? Walking out of a meeting. You said in government, and I've always had that fear. And Doral, obviously, so if you were to make that leap, right, I think it could happen with either a switch of a party. It could happen based on just how some election results didn't go the way that maybe some of the higher ups they were projected to go. And you think that in the smaller communities, it doesn't happen. And I'm not saying Doral is small, because it's almost 100,000, right? It's not Miami though,
It's in the shadows of Miami still.
Yes, you may not think that Doral or Hilton-Parma or wherever it is, Concord, Pflugerville may have that, but it could happen anywhere. And it happens at other levels too. And I don't talk about it much, but I had to not witness it. I didn't have to watch on TV, but Melissa went through it with a school district. And it's tough, man. It is. I don't know how people make the decisions they do.
Shane, you said you'd be flipping tables, and in true Bill's Mafia fashion, I'd be jumping through the tables.
That's right, burning them on fire and jumping through them.
Well, as Shane showed us, I don't know, Jay, did you get a chance to watch the Tosh?
I saw it. I've actually seen it before.
Yeah.
It's funny.
Well, that was pretty funny.
Maybe we'll get him to a Bills game, and I'll see if I can get him through a table.
There you go. By choice or not, right? Just throw us out.
I'll throw him through it.
Well, guys, this was great. I had fun. Barbie's been someone that I've thought about for a while, and I was emailing her work email at one point and was getting bounced back. That's how I found about it. Okay. Then I had to reach out to her and hear about it. And then I did some research and saw the article, and the article's linked to the video. So, then I called her back and said, okay, what's on and off limits? And she was great. She was like, I'm not talking to reporters. I've had some of the local Miami stations reach out, but she said, nothing's off limits for y'all. Whatever you want to ask about, we can talk about. So It was hopefully cathartic for her to be able to, to work through it a little bit. And hopefully some people that are our listeners got to hear what it's like to maybe be a city manager, even if you're never going to be one, to understand that maybe what your city manager might go through a little bit more. Or if you're interested, like you two are potentially, in seeing what that opportunity is, knowing that that's a reality, whether it's kind or not to think about, the impact on your family, the impact on your career, what's said in an article is something that is definitely a possibility once you step into that type of authority.
Absolutely. Well, it was great to have her here, and that it's a unique story that I hope not many people have to experience. And good to see that she is resilient and strong enough to be where she is today.
All right, guys. Till next time.
We got a couple weeks. We're off for a little bit. Yeah. That'll be good for the contract negotiations.
That's right. Maybe we can lock down Jay for an extension.
Or maybe not.
Maybe not. All right, guys. Till next time. Peace out.
Bye, everyone.